up to 3 minutes to respond to each of these, and then after these 3 questions, we will move on to the audience questions. So our first question, do you support a $15 an hour minimum wage? If yes, by what increments over what period of time do you think we should take to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour? Going forward, do you think the minimum wage should be tied to rise with consumer price index so that it will automatically rise as it is adjusted to inflation? And to pick the order for these, we will start tonight's questions off with Abby. So we'll start with Abby, and then we'll circle back over to Courtney and just have a circle going the rest of the evening.
Hello? Can you hear me? Oh, you can. All right, perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris, again, and thank you for that question. The fact is, right now, we are living in a country, in a state, where you have people working 40 hours a week and still living in poverty. It's not right, and also they're working multiple jobs. We absolutely have to address this, and we absolutely have to raise the federal minimum wage, and at the same time, I want to make sure that we're smart about it, and we figure out a way to actually incentivize states to raise their wages as well. Because at the end of the day, a living wage is different in Iowa than it is in New York, and we need to figure out policies to incentivize the states to raise their wages, tie it to CPI, and make sure that you do have folks all across the country being able to work hard and being able to make it. Because right now there is a difference between making a living and being able to have a life. You know, one of the experiences I had was actually in 2007, I was speaker's paid in the Iowa House. That's when we raised our minimum wage to $7.25, which is now federal minimum wage. We did it, that was the magic number then, we all thought it was going to be fine. But here we are, 10 or 11 years later, and folks are struggling because we didn't tie it to CPI. That's a problem, and I will not sign on to any minimum wage bill unless it ties it to CPI, because the fact is, this is an issue that needs to stop being politicized, because it's about families and it's about their lives, and that's what I will focus on in Congress. So thank you.
So I do support a $15 minimum wage. I have a plan, a 3-year phase-in plan, that would happen in 6-month increments of about $1.75 in the first increment to get us up to $9 an hour and then $1.50 after that. And what's unique about my plan is that we would have large corporations be a 6-month cycle ahead of small businesses. And what that allows is for small businesses to see a little bit more money in the economy before they have to raise the wages of their employees. Small businesses are pretty reactionary and they operate under some pretty small margins. And what we don't want to do is drive small businesses out. In the long run, more money in the economy will help small businesses because there'll be more people to go to restaurants, there'll be more people to go to patronize those small businesses in the community. But what we want to do is make sure that they don't have a window of time where they're seeing their costs go up without their revenues going up. And so that's why I have that plan put in place. So 6-month increments, 3-year phase-in plan, and then once we get there, we'll tie it to CPI to make sure we don't have to have this conversation again, because it's just so important that everybody who works makes a living wage. Right now, all of us are really supplementing people who aren't making a living wage. We have to supplement their housing, we have to supplement their food. They're not able to make it. And $15 an hour, I hear people say, you don't need that in Iowa. I'm like, do the math, because there's really no country, or no state in the country where you can live on much less than $15 an hour. When you think about rent in your apartment, when you think about healthcare, when you think about food, when you think about education, I mean, nobody wants to be stuck making the minimum wage. So you want to go get some job training, you want to get some things to better yourself. And when you take all that into account, you really can't get there for much less than $15 an hour. So I support that 100%.
So the short answer is yes. I support a $15 an hour minimum wage. I grew up in a family where my mother was a single parent, and she raised both my brother and I while working 3 jobs. She'd work a full-time job, get off, go work a part-time job. And then on the weekends would work a part-time job that was almost like a full-time job. All the while, juggling her checkbook to be able to make sure that we had a roof over our head, clothes on our back, and food on the table. And no family in 2018 should be living in the same manner that I did in the 1970s. And so, brother, that's what we're living with. We live in a state where we have one of the lowest unemployment rates yet. More than 10% of our state's population is living in poverty. And so if you take for account families that are making $20,000 or less, in those homes you have a child, likely one or two parents living in the home, and that parent is working for $7, $8, or $9 an hour, unable to make ends meet. I say that it would be great, certainly, to use increments to raise the minimum wage to $15, but why wait? Why not allow for the cost of inflation to take effect today? You know, CPI is certainly good if you look at the pros, because when you think about the cost of the rising cost of inflation, certainly that evaluation allows for that to happen. But when you think about the cons of that, you have to take into account what it would take to live here in Waterloo, for example, versus what it takes to live in Chicago. And so for families that would likely need $15 an hour to be able to keep that roof over their children's head, some families would likely need more. And so if we're not conducting the kind of evaluation that's necessary to ensure that we have the right amount, and I say that $15 an hour is certainly a starting point. I work for a large nonprofit. The lowest paid employee who works for my agency makes $15.49 an hour. That $15.49 an hour is something that the leadership of our organization thought would be appropriate to make sure that every employee who works for us, and we have over 1,300 employees, would be able to make enough money to care for their families and to be able to pay their bills. And so I think that it's certainly possible, I think it's certainly necessary, and I think it's incumbent upon this next Congress to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to decrease poverty, not just here in Iowa, but across this country. So thank you.
So I do support raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, because nobody working 40 hours a week should be living in poverty. And I think we've heard stories already, but there was a woman that I met who was a waitress. She's working 3 different jobs and going to school and still not able to make ends meet. So we need to make sure that this is a priority. And I think we can do it better. I think we can do it. I'll figure this out sooner or later. But yeah, I think we can raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2024. And it would take increments of about $1 each year. But I think we actually need to tie it to average hourly workers wage of all workers, not CPI, because I think that's when you're talking about, we want to make sure that it doesn't outpace wage growth. We want to make sure that all workers' wages are being represented in this. So yes, raise minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2024, and do it based on the average hourly wages of all workers.